I'll just for a second. Pin that and away we go.
Good morning. It's so lovely to be here, and thank you so much to Rabbi Jacobson for inviting me. Your wonderful community. It's a real morning, lovely to see some old friends and familiar faces, and it's very special. I thought this morning I would speak about the concept of kavanah, of intention when it comes to tefillah. We are only a week away from Rosh Chodesh Elul, which is quite a frightening thought, really, how quickly the year comes around. 5 weeks till Yom Tov, if you think about it. How did that happen? I was just Pesach yesterday, and here we are again, already approaching Yom Tov. So I want to try and give you some insight into this fabulous concept of what we call in halakha kavanah, which means intention, having intention. We all go to shul, we come 3 times a day, shachris mincha mariv, but sometimes, I don't know if you've experienced this, you can find yourself in the middle of the Amid, and before you know it, you're at Es Semach David. You're like, how did I get here? How did that happen? Because we switch onto autopilot. And there is a danger when it comes to religion. We do things by rote. We do things automatically, robotically almost. It's like when you're driving the car, you don't even think about it. It's all in your subconscious. And we don't want tefillah to be that experience. There was a very interesting study that took place in 2001 at Duke University Medical Center, where they took 150 cardiac patients and they split them into 2 groups. And they did a study where for one group of people, there were people praying for them. And for the other group of people, there was no one praying for them. And what was fascinating, there was significantly better medical outcomes for the group of people that had others praying for them. And this study, I read about it in an article by Chief Rabbi Warren Goldstein. He described how it was done double blind. Neither the researchers nor the patients knew anything about what was going on. It wasn't a one-off study. They did it again in San Francisco General Hospital. And both times, the outcome was the group that had people davening for them, praying for them, had better medical outcomes. I mean, it comes to no surprise to us that prayer is a powerful force, both in our lives, in the world at large. And it calls on us to daven to serve Hashem, in a very important way. I've printed out some source sheets here, which I will pass around, but I know it's a little bit early in the morning. There's absolutely no requirement to look inside, but should you wish to, I'm going to refer to some of these sources. Because there's a pasuk in last week's Sedra. Of course, from which tefillah? Shema. We say it so many times every day, morning and evening. We have this obligation to serve Hashem with our hearts. B'chol levavchem, with all your heart. Says the Gemara in Tanis in source 2. La'avos Hashem lekechem, la'avdeh b'chol levavchem, eza hi avodah shehi b'leiv, have omezu tefillah. This is referring to prayer. Prayer is considered avodah shebelev. I was having an interesting discussion with a congregant of mine. He said it's strange that we refer to prayer as avodah shebelev. Maybe it should be avodah b'moach. It should be the avodah of your brain. What would you say? What do you use more when you pray? Your heart or your head? Your intellect or your emotions? What do people think? Let's make this a little bit interactive. What do you reckon? Emotions. It's a tough one. On the one hand, we refer to prayer as something from the heart. I think you're using your mind. You're really trying to focus and attune your mind, but we see that it goes deeper, and you're right. It does also involve the emotions. Now, there's a Rambam. The Rambam derives requirement from prayer every single day. Originally, this was informal. Prayer was informal. Later, it became formalized in the wake of the Babylonian exile, and it became the Seder Tefillah established by the Anshe Knesset HaGadolah, the men of the Great Assembly, Shachris Mariv. The words of the Amidah that we said this morning, our ancestors have been saying for 2,000 years. I find that itself is such a powerful concept, that you are saying something that is so relevant and so meaningful to your life, and it's been said for generations and generations and generations for 2,000 years. But the Rambam says in Hilchos Tefillah, Birchos Kohanim, mitzvah aseh lehispala b'chol yom. It's a mitzvah to daven every day. Shneim avatem es Hashem Elokechem epi hashmo lomdu she'avodah zu hi tefillah. This va'avadatem is referring to tefillah, as we say, levavtem b'chol levavchem. Omru chachamim ezu tefillah shebelev zu tefillah ve'ein minyan ha-tefillas min ha-Torah ve'ein mishna ha-tefillah hazos min ha-Torah ve'ein tefillas man kavua min ha-Torah. So a lot of tefillah, it comes out, is rabbinic. However, the concept of prayer, the concept of avodah shebalev, is very, very much biblical. Last week I lost my wallet. You know that panic. We've all been there when you lose your wallet. I was stressed. It didn't make sense. I retraced my steps. Kids, well, they take it, they borrow it. Kids are quite good at taking money, right? I know, where did you? Where is it? Where is it? I looked at the car. I went to all the shops that I'd been to that day. Literally did not know what was going on. What was even more stressful was that morning I'd been to the ATM to take out quite a substantial amount of money to pay someone. I had to pay a bill for some money. I was very stressed out about it. It did not make sense to me. Looked absolutely everywhere. I went to Daven Mincha Maariv, put some money in Stocker Box. I must say, I davened that Mincha Maariv with slightly more kavanah than usual. Came home from Mincha Maariv, and my wife greeted me with good news. The wallet had been found. It was gone. It ended up, don't ask me how, in the dryer. I don't know. I had a very dry wallet. Mystery. I think I said. That's why I said on Shabbat to my community, your rabbi's involved in money laundering. It was quite stressful. What was the weird bit? This was really the stressful bit. Was it was missing £200. Didn't make sense. So we found some money flying around the dryer, but the rest of it had gone. It did not make sense. I had searched high and low. We looked. It didn't make sense. We took out the filter, looked, nothing. Couldn't understand it. Just couldn't understand it. In the middle of the night, my wife said to me, I bet you it's in the extractor pipe. Went down the stairs. Lo and behold, I take out the pipe. And in the pipe, I find the notes. They've been sucked out of the machine into this pipe. But why am I telling you this story? Because that's tefillah. And we are often involved when we need something in life. Suddenly, our level of tefillah improves. The famous example, the quintessential example of tefillah is from where? Can anyone think of an example of tefillah? Chana. Moshe as well. But Chana, as we see from the Gemara tells us, in Gemara in Brachas, that we learn a lot of laws of our tefillah from Chana. Why from Chana? One should never know of it. Chana was childless. And therefore, when you need something, when you want something, when something's pressing on your mind, suddenly the level of engagement at tefillah changes. And perhaps, by the way, this is one of the reasons why HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants a relationship with us. Tefillah isn't supposed to just be something done by rote on autopilot. When we come to shul, he wants us to have a genuine, heartfelt, real relationship with him. Gemara Brachos describes in source number 5, Kama helchis of Gevurta. How many halachas do we learn out? Gevriosa, Ikal Lemishma Mehani Koroi Techana, that we learn out from the Pesukim of Chana. V'chana hi medaberes al liba. She was speaking on our heart, says the Pasuk, Meskan, Mekan Espal Son She Yikaven Liba. From here we learn that when you daven, you must have intention. Rak Sefosel knows, only her lips were moving. Mekan Mespala She Yafkos Psosa. We know that when you pray, you have to move your lips. It's not okay just to think it in your head. You actually have to verbalize what you're saying. V'kololo Shamoa. From here we learn that when you daven, you should daven quietly. This is really important. When you do the Amidah, it's supposed to be the silent prayer. You're saying it, but you're saying it quietly. You know, we've all been there sitting next to that guy in shul who, for some reason, right, he seems to be saying it so loudly you can't focus on what you're trying to say. But it's clear. It's really, really clear from Chana the requirement to daven, with intention and with sincerity and quietly. This is the quintessential example. Shimshon Rav describes it. He's in a beautiful way. He calls it intimacy and tefillah. Intimate relationship you create with HaKadosh Baruch Hu when you daven, this close connection, this transformative relationship that tefillah is supposed to bring into your life. And during these moments, we're supposed to make prayer a real journey. And the Maharal says that prayer, we're making a declaration of our dependency on the Almighty, that all our welfare, all our needs, everything in our life, nothing, absolutely nothing happens without the blessing of Hashem. Okay, so that's by way of introduction. May I ask how long I have? Okay, you tell me. 5-10 minutes. 10 minutes. Okay, so I'll share with you some more insights. There's a famous smug. The smug, his name was Rabbi Yitzchak of Kobel. He died in 1280, right? So he writes this idea of kavanah. He's one of the makarot, one of the sources we have from learning from the makarot and from davening with kavanah. If you look in source 4, he describes here very beautifully what it means daven with intention. He quotes the Rambam, Hilchos Tefillah, Lehispala b'kavona b'chol yom shene'emar levavtem Hashem levavchem. The Darshan Rabbi Seinu Zichron Levracham, our sages expounded. Eizahu avodah shebelev, havezu tefillah b'kavona. This is referring not just to tefillah, but to tefillah with kavana, with intention. So now he goes on in source at the top of the back page. Lehispala b'kavona. Perush. This means to say, afal pi she'ikat tefillas rabbanon, even though the foundation of our tefillah is rabbinic, the kol mokum yesh tefillah shehu min Torah. There is tefillah that's from the Torah. Dechsiv ubekashto misham es Hashem lekecha v'tosa ki deshenu b'chol levavcha. You seek from Hashem and you find because you sought with all your heart, for nafshecha, with all your soul. V'lamdeinu kamo kain v'chol tefillah shetiknu chacham mikan. Mahi kavanah. Now this is when he gets to the crux of the matter. Well, how do you define the term kavanah? So he says something very simple. She'amanu sheyechashav b'chol teva perushah v'yidaktik shelo yidlog teva achas ki'ilu hayamana ma'os. You say each and every letter, each and every word with focus, as if you were counting money. Imagine every single letter of your tefillah was a fiver. How careful would you be to pronounce each and every letter accurately? Says the Smach, this is the key to davening with kavanah, by pronouncing and enunciating every single word. And if we are not on the madrega, that we can focus on the entire Amidah, at the very least, the avot, the Magen Avot, the first blessing we say, and the final blessings of Modim, that should be done with intention. And even if you can't manage to do both of them, you're kavan ba'avos. The very first blessing Amidah is the most important. That's why, before one starts saying the Amidah, try to focus your minds, gather your thoughts. It's even harder during the week, busy with our work, running from place to place to place. Comes Shabbat, it should be a little bit more easy to focus, but at the very least in the bracha of Avot. Rabbi Eliezer, he quotes as well over here, Sefer B'Sifro Ki Tov Ma'od L'Kavim B'Chasimas Kol Bracha. It's very important to try and concentrate at the conclusion of each blessing. Bracha Ki Yesh Pehen Mea B'Sholosh V'Asar Tevos Keneged Tevos Sheyesh Tefilas Chana. And he refers to 130 words that are connected to the tefillah of Chana. So again, it's all originating from the concept of Chana. And he says the following. He says, imagine you're standing before a king, a human king. You're invited to the palace. King Charles has invited you to collect your knighthood, right? You're coming. You're going to think very, very carefully. A person's going to think about every single word he's going to say, and calculate it and plan it. And that's the idea when it comes to tefillah. We should try and think very carefully. What are we praying for? How are we going to pray? And this is the idea. Now, there's an interesting Gemara. The Brisa describes a conversation with Rabbi Eliezer. Eliezer was on his deathbed. There's a Gemara in Brachot, Kavches, source 6. Rabbi Eliezer is on his deathbed, and his students come around, and they give him some instructions. Right? If you're trying to think, what would be your instructions you'd give somebody? The question they ask is, how do you get to Olam Haba? How does one achieve the world to come? So the Gemara in Bracha says, Son Rabbanon, Shechol Rabbi Eliezer nichnasu Talmidei Levakros, his students, Talmidei of Levakros, students came in to visit him. Amru lo Rabbeinu lamdeinu orchas chaim v'nisked lohen v'chai Olam Haba. Teach us the ways of life that we will receive the world to come. Amalahem, his hiru b'kavod chavareichem. Be very careful with the honor of your friends. Minu b'neichem min hahogyon. And try and remove your children from familiarity, I guess, from doing things just by rote, right? Vayoshrim bein Rabbi second. Vayoshivam bein the Rabbi Talmidei Chachamim. Make sure that they dwell amongst Talmidei Chachamim. Because Shatem Mispalim, when you come to daven, Dar Lifnei Miatem Omdim. Know before who you are standing. Ubishvulkach Tisku L'chai Olam Haba. So here he gives several pieces of advice. What I find beautiful. What's the first piece of advice? Care about the honor of your friends. You want to be able to first, you need to care about you need to think about the people around you. You want to have a relationship with the Almighty, you need to first have a relationship with your fellow human being. Only through doing that will you be able to merit to have a relationship with Hashem through your tefillah. But therefore, this is the advice, the final advice he gives them. Now, there's lots of discussions with kavanah. Is kavanah intention? Is it just reading accurately? what does kavanah actually mean? Rabbi Yoni also describes, why does he describes you should be mindful that you're standing before Avichem Shabashamayim, Father in heaven. Why specifically to say that? And Rabbi Yoni explains, once again, it's all about relationships. It's a relationship we have with Hashem. When you come to davening, it has to be a real relationship. It has to be a genuine relationship between you and the Almighty. Let me conclude with one final thought. It's an interesting Yerushalmi that I must share with you. The Gemara in Yerushalmi, and I apologize, I don't have this on the source sheet, but very, very interesting Yerushalmi, which makes a number of comments about kavanah. Right, intention is not easy. Having intention when you come to davening is very, very hard. The Gemara in the Yerushalmi describes that if one davens and you find yourself suddenly, I said before, in the middle of davening, you're on autopilot, and then you find yourself in Shomea Tefillah without realizing how you got there. The Gemara said there's a chazaka that you daven with kavanah. So if there's a good place to end up, Shomea Tefillah is a good one. The Gemara also says that if one davens without kavanah, and one knows that you could daven again with kavanah, you should do so. However, we personally don't do that nowadays. The Mishnah Berurah says we're not on that level. We're not on that level to go back, because what will happen? We'll go back again second time, and we'll look out the window again. We'll get distracted again. We're not living on that level. We don't generally do that. Rabbi famously said he only once had kavanah in his entire lifetime. Once in his lifetime, he had kavanah. You think if Rabbi only had kavanah once in his lifetime, what hope is there for me and you? That's quite a sombering thought. Shmuel said that while he was davening, he used to count birds during his davening. Rav Bunai Bar Chia said he used to count bricks while he was davening. And Rav Masnia said he is grateful that his body knows that he's supposed to bow during Modim. In other words, he often lost focus. What's the message? The message is all these comments, they highlight to us the challenge of kavanah. Kavanah is not something we can take for granted, and it's something very, very, very challenging. It's really a lifetime avodah. The Mishnah Berurah, as I mentioned before, talks about not going back to repeat it. Talks about the dichotomy of both focusing on the words, but also focusing on the meaning of the words. And just to conclude, everyone agrees that tefillah, kavanah, right? It's a realization of fulfilling the mitzvah of tefillah, a realization of standing before Hashem, and a realization that you're paying attention to the words. And from the times of the Gemara till today, we see this as a major challenge, something that we need to try and do our very best to have kavanah. And please God, we should try and emulate the Hasidim HaRishonim. What did they used to do? The Mishnah tells us they used to prepare an hour before tefillah. They used to come early to shul. If one comes late to shul and rolls in and worried about other things, obviously you're going to set yourself up to fail. If you come early and focus as if you had an important meeting, and you try and spend a few moments to try and engage in that content of kavanah, then you'll be able to do so. Please God, my blessing to all of us is that as we approach the high holy days, we're going to be doing lots of davening, lots of shul time. We should be able to do so with kavanah, with intention, with focus. And please God, all our tefillot should be answered with tova for the good. And I wish you all, a little bit early to say, but I wish you all a kasima v'chasima tova.
What occasion Rabbi had kavanah? We should learn from that.
Yeah. It's an interesting question. Yeah, it's not written, but that would be an interesting one if it would say exactly where. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to turn off the Zoom and I'll finish the proceedings here for those on